Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's look at this sheet. Well, let me go back to Drive. So your view in Drive might look a little bit different than this, and it might, for instance, look like this, where you have these big icons, right? I find that pretty annoying, so if you go up to the top right of your screen and click on this little icon that says List View, it gives you like a more comprehensive list or condensed. Okay, and then they're named in such a way where we're just going to go from 1 down to 10. Okay, so here we are on basic 1. Okay, so XLSForm, so what's going on here? The minimum information you need for XLSForm to work is this worksheet here called Survey. It has to be called Survey. And then you need to have these 3 columns. You need to have type, name, and label. Okay? Column A, the type determines the question type that you're working with, right? And I'll give you a list in a second here of all the different question types, but this can be date, time, geopoint would be the GPS, text, image, integer. So these are just some common question types. Okay, and then we have the names. So the names are what the variable name that we're going to give it. It has to be a unique variable name. And so in the program, when that gets saved, it's going to use that. There can't be any spaces, and I think those are the only requirements. And then the label is what people see on the phone itself when they're collecting the data. So typically we have some sort of abbreviated or condensed version for the variable name, like measurement date time in this case. And then the label that the person sees when they get on their phone is going to say select date and time. Okay, so this is like the hello world equivalent of a XLSForm. And then let's go through the process then of converting this to an XML or the XForm, right? So if you just get a web browser open and you Google, this is I think a link I don't have. This link is in this material here. If you're following along in this outline, but if you just Google ODK online converter, that one, it's the first thing that comes up. So just Google ODK online converter, and then you're going to want to keep this tab open because we're going to be using it a ton. So it looks like this. Yep. Okay, and the workflow for converting is I need to, this Google Sheet, right, is on the Google Cloud, so I need to download it, right? So I'm going to go to, in my Google Sheet here, I'm going to go to File, and then Download As, and then an Excel file, okay? So I'm going to download this Google Sheet by going File, Download As, Excel file. Okay, and that just stuck it in my downloads folder. And then I'm going to come back to opendatakit.org/XLSForm and then choose that Excel file that I just downloaded. Okay, so I'm going to go to Choose File, grab that one I just downloaded, and say OK. All right, does everybody have, should we go through those steps again, or do we have the first step is to download the Google Sheet as an XLS, as an Excel file. Yeah, and please feel free to help your neighbor if there's any questions or if it doesn't make sense. Yep. So where are we at? Yeah.
I already made some.
Okay, so you already did it? Yeah. Yeah. So then you go browse.
Yeah, but already again.
Yeah. Yeah, and then yeah, if you click submit, then just wait for it. Click submit. Yeah. Okay, and then just wait. Yeah, just wait. Yeah, you're ahead.
Okay, I selected it.
Yep. Okay, and that's where we're supposed to be at. Yep. So all we've done is we've downloaded the Excel file and we've selected it here in this converter. Okay. All right. So it should show the name of the file here that you selected, and then what we're going to do is just click submit, and then it's going to do again checking the logic to make sure that we didn't break any of the XForm rules while building this this XLS form. And then there's two things we can do. We can preview it in this thing called Kaito, or we can download the XForm directly. And what we want to do is preview in Kaito. So if you do preview in Kaito, what's going to come up now is sort of like an example of the workflow you just built. And it's going to show you the types of questions that you put in there, and then it's going to label them in the way that you labeled them in your XLS form. Okay, so this is always a challenge to keep everybody on the same page here. Has everybody chosen a file, and do they have the preview open in Kaito? Are we good? Yep, okay, great. So just take a second, just take a minute to look around the preview. Yep, I think we can move on. What we're going to do is just build complexity now to these forms. So now we have the basic layout. This is the minimum viable product for an XLS form. But there's lots of more interesting things we can do from here. Okay, does anybody have any questions about this process? Was everybody able to preview this XLS form in Kaito? Is it good? Yep, good, okay. Any questions about this? Yeah, Kaito is, it's another, I'm going to probably get this wrong. I believe it's another open source project that really is all about letting XForms be entered in on a web browser. So what we're talking for the most part is actually like an app on a phone, but Kaito is all about doing these forms through a web browser and actually doing them intelligently so that it works offline. And the beauty of a web browser, again, is it's cross-platform. So like you can run XForms in Safari or Chrome or whatever you want. So it's not as developed as ODK, but that's in Kaito, yeah. Okay, so let's go to the second form. So this one builds in some language support, so that's kind of the point of this one. So back to Google Drive, and then open up example 2. All right. We're going to go pretty quickly through all this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory the way that I have it laid out here. But the syntax is, instead of having one label now, we have 2 labels. The syntax is that you have to have 2 colons, and then whatever you want the language to appear as an option in the phone. So like English and Netherlands and Nepali, those would be the 3 options that show up on the phone. And then that code at the end is actually really important. I have a link to it, a little note that explains this. But it's the 2-digit abbreviation based on this ISO code standard, and there's a link for it. And so you can use any language that you want. And again, each of these languages will present itself as an option within ODK when the person's collecting the data here. Okay, yes, sir.
Do I need to buy?
Yeah, please. Thank you. There you go.
Thanks. Now, if I enter it in Nepalese, or what's the language?
Nepali. Yeah,
Nepali. I can't understand it, but I need to use the data.
Yes.
Can I then switch it back to English as well?
So the beauty of this language support is it's like a wrapper around what's really happening. So like, and what I mean by that is, what language would you be working in?
Vietnamese.
So Vietnamese. So you're going to want to have your form in Vietnamese, right?
Yeah.
And when the people are completing it, everything's in Vietnamese. But when it gets saved, and then when you look at the data, all of that data is going to be in reference to the name. So whatever you put in column B, like the date time's not going to say, this says like miti ra samaya, right? It's not going to say miti ra samaya. It's going to say measurement, date time, and give you the date.
Yeah.
Right? But so the questions where they type stuff in, you're on your own to translate that. But for all of the like phone data, like the GPS, all that, will be labeled with whatever you put here in the name.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
The link that you just, oh, sorry. The link that you just showed,
Yeah.
it's not possible for us to
Does,
see it.
Doesn't work? If you just hover over it, it doesn't show up? Yeah. That's really weird because we're looking at the exact same thing. I wonder if there's some permissions thing. Let me do this. I'm going to put this into anybody can edit. So don't mess these up, please. I'll put it back afterwards and we'll just see if this, yeah, does it show up now if anybody refreshes their browser? It's probably a permissions thing. No?
No.
I'll figure it out later and it does. Yeah. Yeah, after you refresh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now whatever you guys do here, don't write like this is crazy boring in the sheet because everybody can see that now, okay? So this is live. We're sharing this information. So yeah, so try not to mess these forms up as we go through. I believe I have a copy of all these somewhere safe. If I don't, I should do it right now. Seriously, I'm going to download them all right now. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's happening. You write some nasty message in there. Okay. So does anybody have a question about language support? I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty straightforward. Yes, go.
Yeah, like, so whatever we want, we can select a different language.
Yep.
Whoever collect the data.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is going to be really hard for me to remember, but here. Yeah.
So it's mean like we can select whatever we want the language.
Yeah.
But like the collector, whoever they like, for us it's like Burmese language.
Yeah.
So they will collect with Burmese language. But when I look the data from that's the finally I
Yeah.
can select the English language. So it is automatically translate or.
Well, no. So it doesn't automatically translate, but everything is labeled with whatever you put in the column B here. And anything that's not like a written entry will be in, yeah, I mean, it'll be labeled with whatever you put here. If they
Okay.
type in, like if you say, where do you live, and you just leave a text box,
Yeah.
if they type that in Burmese,
Yeah.
it's going to come to you in Burmese. But
Okay.
it'll say citizen scientist location, or whatever you name that question here, it'll say citizen science location Nepito in Burmese.
Yeah.
Right? So.
But how I can know, like, I know the Burmese language,
Yeah.
but who doesn't know Burmese language,
Yeah.
how they can see the data?
Yeah, so for text data like that, you just have to use Google Translate or get a translator, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay? Yeah, all right, yes.
So in case,
Yep.
for example, I want to create a European project, and that means a lot of different languages.
Yep.
Can the user select a language, or how does it work with the 3 labels?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I knew that the risk here was that it's not clear how they actually select this, but when we get to ODK Collect, it'll be clear. There's a little menu option, and then you say choose language, and then it gives you every label option you give here will give a option in the list. Yeah, so it's quite handy. We'll do that in a second. All right. We're going to move on. Yep. Unless anybody has any pressing questions, but we have a safe backup now, so you can do whatever you want to these sheets. Okay. So now we're moving on to a select one or a select multiple. And this is where it's important that you know something about Star Trek, right? Is this, would it be more helpful to have that like that size? Is that better? Yeah? In the back, you guys can see good or well? Sorry for the bad English. Yeah, so this is how this works. We've seen date, time, geopoint, text, integer. We've seen all that. So now let's take a look at this select one, yes, no. Okay, the select one and select multiple are present a list of options to the user, and if it's a select one, it's a radio button. It only allows them to choose one of them. If it's a select multiple, it gives a little box with the checks, and you can select multiple. So it's kind of self-explanatory. And the new thing here, though, is what you'll notice is that there's a new tab in our sheet, right? So now we have a choices tab. And what did we name our select one? Well, we're calling this yes, no list, okay? And the lists live in the choices worksheet here. So if we go over here now, we can see the list name, yes, no, and then these two columns give you what you need to populate that list, right? So a yes-no list is really easy. We want two items in the list, right? We want yes and we want no. And again, you can have language support here as well. So you could have name. And again, this is the variable name. And then you have the label, what the person sees. And then you could have label English, and then you could have label Nepali, and it'd be ho hoina, right? Or some other language. The way that it aggregates these lists, again, is if the list name is the same, it puts them in the same list. So for instance, captains here, what we have here is 5 different captains, and these are the variable names, and this is the full name, right? And then we have activities. So let's go back here. We have a select one, right here that says who's your favorite captain in Star Trek? And this is a select one. It forces you to make an answer. You can't say I like all of them. You have to choose out of these 5 captains who your favorite person is. And what I'm going to do is really quickly download this guy and then get it into in Kaito so we can actually look at what this looks like. Yep. Okay. So again, this is like the web browser version, so it looks a little bit different on the phone, but it's the same idea. So here, do you know what Star Trek is? Yes or no? Yes, no. See, it doesn't let me click both. And then, who is your favorite captain? Does anybody have a vote on this? Kirk. Can I hear a Picard? Anybody? Literally, Jean-Luc. Thank you. Okay, one-on-one. I'm going to vote for Picard, so Picard wins. Sorry. Definitely Jean-Luc. I list bias there too. I put him in the top. So you can actually randomize these lists. That's one of the advanced features. If you want to kind of untangle your bias about how you list these things, you can have a random function. And then watched, this is a select multiple. So have you watched one episode? Have you watched a movie? Have you watched all 6 of the original series? Have you met someone in the Star Trek cast or participated in a convention? Has anybody done all those things? Okay. Yep. Guilty as charged. Okay. Yes, sir. One moment. Here. Ready? Long toss. Okay.
Yeah. Can you store them, the names that you've given, and in the other?
This one, the choices?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I name them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when I receive the data, does it come as integers, or is it still a string or something like that?
You can name. There might be rules on this, so don't quote me on it. It might be that this has to start with a letter.
Okay.
Sorry, with a number, or sorry, a letter. But let's say that it can be whatever. You could name these whatever you want.
Right.
And so yeah, when it comes back, it's going to have that. But it's probably best practice to make this somewhat sort of human readable.
Right.
Just so that it's sort of more intuitive for people when you're actually looking at the data. But yeah, it could be something more cryptic, and then you could decode it kind of afterwards.
Perfect.
Is that
Perfect.
Yeah, excellent. Any other questions about this? So I think here's what it looks like. Again, select one, select multiple. Good? Yes. Could you toss? Yeah, great.
This is more like a general question about the structure of the file. What I see is that in the survey part, in the tab, you are recalling names that you have given yourself on the other tab.
Yep.
In that sense, do you have to follow any kind of structure, specific words to make sense out of it, or can you put it randomly wherever you want?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's take, for example, captains. So here I'm doing a select one, that's the question name, and then I'm passing it the captains list, right? So the list for captains belongs in choices here, so let's find all of our captains. So to answer your question, in this choices column, you have to have, worksheet, you have to have these 3 columns. So that's part of the built-in structure. You can have more if you have multiple languages, but you have to have these 3. And the captains has to be spelled exactly like it is in that other one, and that's what aggregates that list together. And other than that, there's no rules. You can call this whatever you want. If I did this though, right, and then I recompiled it and run it, my list is only going to have 4 items now, and that one, Jean-Luc Picard, the best captain, would not be in the list anymore. So let's rectify that problem there. Does that kind of, yeah.
That's a follow-up question. So it's up to me if I separate these different categories per tabs or if I put them all together in the same one.
Okay.
And is it possible even to mess up and mix everything in the same tab, even though I think it's counterproductive, but just to have an idea?
Yeah. I think maybe I understand your question better. All of the choices, this list of choices have to be in this one sheet called choices. Yeah, you can't have choices 1, choices 2, it has to be choices. And if you have like a complicated form, your choices might have 10,000 rows in it, but they all have to be in that, yeah. And the survey has to be exactly like it is survey, like that, yep, okay. So we're going to move on to required and relevant. Yeah. Could you, I'll toss it. Ready? Okay, please don't break a computer. Good catch. Nice.
So it's the same. Suppose we have a list of activities, and if I wanted to rank it based on like people's preferences, so is it possible to do that?
Yeah. So to do a ranking list, that is a good question that I have never had to do. But I mean, I guess you could do it with like a select your favorite, select your intermediate, but I don't know if there's an explicit way to rank. But let's look into that at the break. That's a great question. Yeah. It's not one-to-one on that. Yeah. So definitely you can do it in Google survey. But yeah, I'm not positive about this. I'm just being cautious though. It might definitely be the case. So let's move on to the required relevant. So now I'm in number 4. And this is really important again because this controls the logic flow of your form in response to how people answer questions. Okay? So I'm going to zoom in so we can all see this. So it's the same form we were just looking at, except here I've added this new column called relevant. Okay, so you see the relevant column here. And what I'm doing now is I'm saying for rows 7 and 8, I only want to show those questions if they say yes to they know what Star Trek is. Okay, so like if I look in my relevant clause, no Star Trek, so that variable is actually right here, right? So that variable no Star Trek is right here. And then the answer is yes. Okay, and remember yes was one of my options and choices for that. So it's yes or no. Right, so let's go back to the survey here. So if they say yes, then it's going to present these 2 questions. And if they say no, it's going to skip those questions altogether. So I'm going to compile this and then show you what that looks like. Oops, that one. Okay, so here we are. Okay, wait for it. I think I did the wrong one. Yep. Okay, so see how the question right now, the form here that we're looking at, ends with, do you know what Star Trek is? Right? And if I say no, then that's it. That's the end of the form. Because I have those hidden underneath this relevant clause. Only if selected Star Trek, no Star Trek is yes, then it's going to show it. And so then if I come back here and I say yes, then those questions appear. Okay? So you can have multiple relevant clauses. So you can say this and this, or you can say this or this, right? So it's pretty easy to filter those things. Yes, sir. Let me get the thingy. Yeah.
Is it just putting an and between yes and no?
Yep,
Maybe that's-
yep. There is excellent documentation on all this. So if you just Googled how to do a multiple clause relevant, it'll come up. But to look at it quickly, you would just come in here and then say and selected whatever, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, or you can put or there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So this is the same comment, but then only and in between.
exactly. I'll find a quick example of a more complicated. Yeah. So here's an example just to show you what that looks like of a more complicated form here. Yeah, there we go. So here's like an or that has two different ors. So yeah, so 3 different criteria there. Okay. I'm like picking up the pace a little bit because like there's no way we're going to get through the the stuff I was ambitiously hoping to cover. But does anybody have a pressing question about this relevant? I think it's pretty clear how that works. It's good? Yep. Okay. Let's move to the repeat groups because this is a really powerful piece of functionality. For instance, right now we're doing this campaign in Nepal where we're measuring the flow coming out of these things called stone spouts. And it's not clear ahead of time how many of these spouts, it's like a little tap coming out of the ground, how many of these taps there are at the different sites. One site might have 1, another site might have 10, and another one might have 7, right? So we don't want to hard code a form that says what's the flow from spout 1, what's the flow from spout 2, what's the flow from spout 3, and then maybe we give them 10 options, and most of the time all those are blank, right? That's just a waste of space. So we're going to put a repeat in there that says like, is there a stone spout you want to measure? Yes, so measure it. Is there another stone spout you want to measure? No. Okay, then move on. Or yes, and then you keep on measuring the stone spouts. So that's an example. So this is, let me zoom in on this. So in this case, we have these relevant clauses now. And what I'm going to do is we're going to have this repeat called Star Trek repeat. And it's going to say, select something about Star Trek to watch on YouTube. What did you watch? How many minutes did it take? Select the mood that most closely describes how you feel. And then, do you want to do it again? So then you can watch another thing on YouTube about Star Trek. Then, what did you watch? How many minutes did it take? Yeah, or you can just say, no, I'm done with this Star Trek nonsense. I'm out of the loop. I don't want to do it anymore. The repeat, again, is pretty straightforward. The type, you say begin repeat, and then you name your repeat. And then at the end of the repeat, you have to say end repeat, and you use the same name there. And then whatever you want to loop through, you just put between those 2 begin and end statements. So in this case, it's a note. A note doesn't have to have a variable name because it's just presenting that information to the user. And then some text, a decimal entry, a select one, and then back to the repeat. So can we look at what this looks like here? While I'm compiling it, does anybody have a question about repeats? It's a really handy functionality. Yes, you got the cube right there by you.
Is this also useful for pictures, or
Yeah.
is there also an option to take multiple pictures?
Yeah, this would be the perfect option. Like if you wanted to have someone just be able to take, yeah, like 1 or 10 or 100 pictures, you could just put that image question inside of a repeat, and then they could, yeah, continue it as many times as they want. Yeah. Yeah, you can put anything you want inside of the repeat, including images, GPS, whatever. So in this case, let's come down here. Would you like to start the repeat? If I say no, again, it just hides it. But if I say yes, and I say yes there, yep, then it says, here's my repeat. Select something about Star Trek to watch on YouTube. What did I watch? I don't know. Picard. How many minutes it take? 10. I'm really sad now. And I want to do it again. And then maybe I watched Kirk. It took 15 minutes, and now I'm super pumped. Okay. So there's my example of a repeat group. Okay. And I can keep on going and going and going and adding repeats, or I can get rid of them. Yeah. For recursive data collection, this is a really powerful tool. The data is it gets a little bit more complicated when you use this, because what you end up with is inside one cell, you end up with a dictionary. And so then you have to go through and parse that out with a script or something. Excel doesn't properly parse repeat groups, but it's not that big of a deal to handle, yeah, outside of it. Okay. Is everybody tracking? We're doing good? Yeah, go. Yeah, let me, no, not a question. Okay, see how it says 1 after it? So you have multiple files that you downloaded. So choose the first one.
The first one is show like that.
Let me go back there. Yeah, where are they? Yeah, so can you delete that one with the 1? Yeah. And then try yeah, you're going to get an error when you compile this one, but it's not like a red error. If we go back to this, in row 10 it says it doesn't have a label, and it's a yellow error, so that's like a warning, but it's okay, it'll still work. I just didn't name my note, is what that's saying, but that's all that's happening. Okay? Is that good? Okay. I think what we'll do is talk about some math, and then maybe we need to skip a few. So let's do some basic math, because the nice thing is we have these variables now. Some of them can be integers or decimals, and we can actually do math. We can also do logic checks on strings. So let's open up number 6 here. And get the view in here a little bit. Okay, so the syntax for this is it's not too bad. There's I think you have these access to the notes now, right? So there's this link that I provided that gives you all of the different functions you can do for math. And as an example here, we have yeah, we're dividing by some numbers, and we're calling a variable here. So it's the $, curly brackets, your variable name, close curly brackets. That passes this calculation, that variable. And then you can do whatever math you want. Plus and minus are just the regular symbols. Divide is this div, and multiply is this star. And then there's also exponent and square root and those sorts of things that are in this link that I provided here. Yeah. You still can't see the link. Did you refresh the? So I think Nick said that. Maybe I didn't share all of them. Did I just share this one? Okay. Yeah, I'll do it at the end. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I'll share. So I didn't have to be so worried about saving all of the things after all. Okay, so let's just do a quick compile of this. And then, nope, why didn't it download? There it goes. Preview. Okay. So here, what I'm going to fill in here is I'm going to say my name is Jeff, and I'm 37, and I've maybe spent 200 hours on Star Trek activities, and then it's going to calculate that 0.0617% of your life was spent on Star Trek activities. So yeah, you can type in your thing, like how old are you, for instance? 24, and how many hours? 12, okay. So you, and I forget, your name is, I'll just do Ty. How about that? Okay, yeah, 0.0057% of your life. That's a lot, right? And so how does this work? Because the math, I think, is clear. You put that in a calculation column. But then in the label, if you want to present that data back, you do something like this. So see part F name. So what is that? Well, that's up here, right? That's where you put in what your name is. So I'm saying Ty or Jeff, right? Comma. You have spent Star Trek life percent. So that's this guy here. So you can go over to the calculation and say round. So I'm doing some rounding. I'm taking the decimal one and multiplying it by 100 to get it to a percent. And then I'm rounding to the 4th decimal place. And then I'm passing that in here, and then percent of your life on Star Trek activities, right? So it just fills this in with these variables. So I think what we should do is just take a couple minutes for you guys to just ask questions or talk with your neighbors or explore these sheets, look at the more advanced ones, and then maybe in 5 minutes we'll get into the next topic. But does anybody, before we kind of take a little mini break? Yeah.
Is there an option for you to, instead of having the repeat option?
Yeah.
Suppose if there was a text box saying that how many measurements would you want to take? Let's say I say 4, and then you open up 4 tabs.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a column you can put in called the repeat number, and then you can have it, I'll show you an example, but it's very doable. If you say, how many times do you want to repeat this measurement? They put in 4, and then you can use that 4 as a constraint on the repeat. So yeah, absolutely. I think one of the forms has it, I think. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Can you have force certain values, like a range that you say you can only fill in something between 1 and 10 and not 11, and then?
Absolutely, yeah. There's constraints you can put. Let me open up this one and show you that. You guys, not everybody has to listen right now. We're kind of having off talk now. Let's do this one. And then let me pull up. So here's the constraint and then constraint message. And so in this case, like, here's an example of a couple of constraints. So we're asking for the year of their birth. And yeah, I mean, we probably could be more explicit and say like above, 1900 or something. But here we just have above 0. And then if they try to type something negative in there, this message will come up and say entry must be greater than or equal to 0. Yeah. So you just add this constraint column and do the logic you want. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Any other questions? Is this starting to make sense? Yes.
Will you also show later how the replies are
Like
going?
what it
Yeah?
looks like? Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of building, all we've done so far right now is just, again, how do we make a blank form? So all we're doing is like making these workflows to make a blank form, and then we'll talk about how you actually distribute and interpret and all that, later on. Yep. I think we're definitely going to run out of time though, so to choose our battles.
Okay, this question might seem a bit obvious, but is it possible to nest different structures, for instance, repeating inside relevant variables or the other way around, setting limits?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do repeats inside of repeats. You can do relevance inside of repeats or outside of repeats or multiple relevance, or you can make it as complicated as you can figure out. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. It's not an obvious question at all. Yep. Anybody else while we're tossing the QB thingy around? Yeah? Okay, well, you know, the good thing is I've tried to lay this out where you have, again, all these. You can download them and look at them in your own time. And